This is real race talk from Texas. It's the Revved Up Sports Show. Here's Bobby Chaffee and Rodney Rodriguez.
All right, back in the saddle again. Another Monday edition of everybody's favorite racing program, the original racing program that broke the mold for everybody else to follow. It is indeed the Revved Up Sports Show out of Texas. Showtime, Bobby Chaffee right here. The Iceman, Rodney Rodriguez right there. Happy, well, I guess we'll just say Super Bowl Sunday week, but happy Daytona 500 week, everybody. A couple more days to the Daytona 500.
Yeah, post Super Bowl game and post Kansas City Chiefs winning over Philadelphia and all of that good stuff. Everything that is the Super Bowl. That's always a good time. That's actually the day where it's where all the racing people become football specialists. You notice that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
absolutely.
I sit and I watch, and all of the race fans are, and I mean, I have people messaging me, telling me things, and I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah, you don't follow racing?
Yeah, it's like, come on.
Or you don't follow football, you just bitch about racing.
Yeah, you just watch NASCAR racing. You don't do any of that. Good stuff. And hey, looking forward to this show this evening because, Bobby, we've kind of got them on back-to-back nights, and we may even have a third one maybe next week. But let's talk about this one this evening. George Hagee is going to be a part of the program tonight, and I think for the San Antonio fans and everyone that wishes that we still had racing in San Antonio, when you go back and you look at some of the great figures that came through San Antonio and everything, Hagee was one of those guys where maybe he was later in the go right there, but something we'll talk to him about. He did it in stages, and he raced with the best of them.
He did, and I think it's one of those where he came along, he was a young gun, and then he was kind of the established veteran in two different eras of late model racing there in San Antonio, so I think that became a unique calling card for him.
Yeah, and of course, stepping away, George, and that's one of the things that we can talk to him about. George lived the dream. I mean, he went off and went to North Carolina, back when it used to be okay to aspire to do those things, and that's really the funny thing right now is we've talked to a lot of different folks on here, and it's really still okay to want to get to Race City, USA. A lot of folks want to frown upon everything, but I mean, seriously, that is the place to be. And Hagee did it, and he's done it in a lot of different variations of it. But when it all comes down to it, he's just a local dude, just like the rest of us. Yeah,
I think so. I think when he's able to find a way, I think building bodies at Bill Davis there for a while, trying to live the dream like everybody else when they wanted to go out. You had to start somewhere to get in your foot in the door out there back in those days. So it wasn't all about writing the paycheck that it is now. Sometimes you had to have talent and a little bit of money. Well, like you said, it's always been about money. You've always had to have some type of sponsor with you. But it definitely is not about the write the check rides like you see today.
That's right. The World Series over at New Smyrna is on. We actually have it streaming in the studio right here with our friends over at Flow Sports, and thanks to them for making that a very affordable way to stay in touch with everything that's going on. And of course, you have everything at Volusia and things that are happening there. But a little disappointed the other night where, they've had a couple of rainouts and everything that's happened right there. You're dealing with Florida. You're dealing with Central Florida. And that's part of the problem right there. And I still see, or I saw a couple of nights ago when you had a rainout and there's folks bitching about what's going on at the racetrack. And it's like, guys, you are at the mercy of Mother Nature. It has nothing to do with what they're doing on the track. I mean, there are certain things that you absolutely cannot predict or do whatever, and it doesn't matter what the weather says. Especially there. I mean, especially there at this time of year, you're going to have these issues, and it's like, back off the track. Come on. I mean, cut them a little slack. I know it's hard, but cut them a little bit of slack.
Yeah, Mother Nature just doesn't care. She's like the honey badger. Don't care. Don't give a damn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, that was the whole thing, right there with that. A couple of nights ago, I saw they shouldn't have run that race. They are trying to pack 9 nights of racing into 9 back-to-back nights. And I tell you what I do love about the World Series. I've always liked this about the World Series. It's pretty cool when you tune in, on a random night, and like tonight, you're watching super late models on asphalt. You're sitting there and they're going to run 35 laps. That's pretty cool. I like that right there. That's short track racing.
Not even, well, most of them buy a new set of tires for the next race.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Hey, but you know what though? You think the asphalt people pissed a lot of people off? Do you hear what they did at Volusia? Since they got past the halfway point, they did not issue Indy refunds, and there was not a single main event run that night.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. There it is, infield tractor tire checking in. How about that? That's some good folks checking in. Considering it's Florida, you figured they would have raced airboats during the rain out. Hell, they had an airboat out there trying to dry the place off. So, Rusty Marcus is a good friend of mine, and various conversations that I've had with him. It's all about trying to get that show in and trying to get everybody done. And it gets really hard. It gets really hard to make all of that presentation happen. And you can't. You can't sit there. And I saw, we saw our friend Cody Brusso with a great run, I think on Friday night, coming home second. And then I think she was on a really good pace on night number 2 for her to maybe chase down and take it one more spot better. But it just didn't work out. It just didn't work out that evening. But it's a lot to cram in there. And you got a lot of classes. And what I like about the World Series, that's you're not doing this 9 nights in a row trying to cram 10 classes into a program. And I think that's scheduling. That it's tough. It's really hard.
Well, I think that people know what to expect. You're looking at 4, maybe 5 classes. Although, granted, that they tore up a lot of stuff in the tour modified race, which you knew was coming if you watched the World Series before and watched the tour type mods all week. They tear a lot of shit up.
Sure.
They race clean for the most part, but when they tear shit up in big packs.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did. The 200 laps so went a little further along than what I thought. But had that been 150 lapper instead of a 200 lapper, they'd have got everything in that night. They wouldn't have no rain issues. But but you got to pay the purse and you got to have the laps to get those guys to come down and want to race.
Well, and that's the whole thing. They advertise this. They give folks, and I saw where the Bombers, they're giving them chances. Because some of those classes, you rain out on a couple of nights and boom, you're done. There goes your time. But they're trying to get folks into the program, which is the most important thing for them, as well as Volusia. This is the whole thing. This all leads to, and it's kind of the question where we talk about with short track racing and with NASCAR. You can look at this right here between the World Series of Asphalt and what they're doing at Volusia, as it always has. This takes us to Speed Weeks or Speed Week.
Speed day. Days now.
Takes us to Speed 3 days or whatever it is now, and that's really the beauty of what happens down there or over there is that that aspect is still there to where all this culminates into where they're going to race on Saturday. That'll be the finale at New Smyrna, but it's still this big build up into the big race, and it the other thing that I saw, Bobby, we were looking at that right before the show started. The whole thing with the choose thing. And, the choose, depending your opinion on that, there are folks that frown upon that. There are folks that do absolutely do not like that. And I totally get that. But it's a byproduct of the guy that was on this show last week. If you haven't heard that, go back and listen to that. But yes, the best pit parties are at rainouts. Abso-freaking-lutely.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't matter the series. That even happens in Winston Cup races. At Cup races, too.
It does. It really does.
Mm-hmm. But, with the choose rule, your thoughts on that? Now with what they're doing, I'm glad that it's, just double file this thing. Find a way to double file it. I posted last night and I see people, because they repainted it there at New Smyrna. It's like, well, what happens if somebody hits the overspray? You know what? Do it. I posted this on their page last night. Do it the big balls way, the way we do it. Go put a cone out there. Get somebody to run that thing out there.
Well, not every track does it.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, but then the drivers claim that the cone's not tall enough. That's the one.
Bullshit.
Remember that big-ass cone, the Fiesta Express lane there in Houston? That big-ass cone they had? There were still drivers that said they couldn't see it because it was too skinny going front to back, that they needed to put a light on top of it or put something on the end of it so that you could see it. But yet, from fan side, it was huge because it had the big Fiesta Express lane banner on it.
And that's where it's a bunch of bullshit, because you got somebody in your ear, and of course those are the times that for whatever reason the hearing goes out, when you happen to run that thing over, they're telling you're coming to the stripe, you know where it's going to be sitting on that line. It's going to be right in the middle. I mean, you just come at it. If you go too high, you go too low, you're going to miss it. I mean,
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, it's sitting right there. There's not really a way to miss it. And I mean, honestly, for me, because that's one of the things to me with the tracks that I've worked at, where you turn that into a marketing thing. I got people, it happened in Houston, it happened in Kyle, it happens in Mobile. I got people that are dying to go set that damn thing down. They want to be that person, and they turn it into a show. And when it comes to, I know that people don't want it to be a show, but when you start doing stuff like that, that's how you dress it up.
Well, it has to be entertaining to get people to watch it. There's only so many people that watch it for the racing, but you know what? At the end of the day, if it's not an entertaining race, you're not watching it. It's all about the entertainment. Always has been.
Dude, we on the very last race of Mobile, we and this is something. It's funny to me. In Mobile, they think that this is just like a brand new thing that's happened to where you call out the cone guy or whatever, and it's like, guys, I've been doing this in Texas for 15 years. This is hardly anything new. But we've got a kid that goes out and does this, and he has taken on the personality of doing like different dances and hopping over the wall and doing all this stuff. Final race of the year, Bobby, we brought him out, and all the drivers signed a brand new cone. All the drivers signed it. I signed it. We brought him out. The biggest ovation of the night, because we presented that on the front stretch, was for the cone guy.
Or the cone kid?
The cone kid, yeah, whatever you want to call it. I mean, but all of this, I mean, there's different ways to do that, and I mean, I totally get it, and I think that now, I think what kind of sucks is when we talk about NASCAR and short track racing. NASCAR does the choose rule and all that, but I mean, I think it's taken away. I mean, I think it's taken away from some of the appeal of that, because it's kind of boring.
Well, NASCAR had to do something, right, to keep them from messing up on pit roads. So I didn't ever thought we'd see the choose rule in Cup racing. I thought it'd always be just the regular double file them up. Here you go. But hey, whatever. I think they tried it at an all-star race just like everything else, and it seemed to work. So
yeah, those exhibition races, that's what they're for. Test.
That's right.
R&D. Hey, friends, especially you guys, don't forget, today is February 13th. Tomorrow is February 14th. That means it's Valentine's Day. So you need to get out, whether it be at the gas station or at the Walgreens, or some of you go-getters doing, Pro Flowers or whatever you're doing. Be sure and take care of those ladies, because they are with you hand in hand when you're out there racing and spending all that time away from home. They're your support system there. So you need to be sure and take care of them on Valentine's Day tomorrow.
And go and give them the heads up that you're going to watch the Clyde Hart Memorial, too. That's what I've already done, is check my box on that. So, it's going to be a nice steak dinner cooked by me, and then when that's done, it'll be the Clyde Hart Memorial there on Flow Sports.
Most beautiful thing for me was the wife. She's got a birthday coming up February, end of February, and it's one of those monumental ones. We're doing a bunch of fun stuff for that. We've never really done the Valentine's thing, with the birthday month and all of that. It's always like, let's concentrate more on the birthday. And same thing. She's like, hey, she actually told me this morning, sober, would you mind if I just go work out tomorrow? I'm like, you can do that.
Yeah, have fun.
Yeah, go do that.
Do that and have a good time.
And she's like, you can watch that one NASCAR race you're going to watch. I don't care what she calls it.
She said you can watch a race. That's all that matters.
She's like, you watch a race. But I mean, the rest of you people, you need to go out there. Seriously, take at least acknowledge it. Whether you do
get a card at least,
right? And just kind of pro tip presented by, I don't know who's presenting the pro tip. Who can we say? Computer Age Automotive, our friends at Cedar Park. Pro tip: when she says, I don't really care about it at all,
I don't want nothing, that does not mean she doesn't want nothing.
That's back to the gas station, something. Something. At least remember to say it.
Yeah. I got to do my shopping and stuff tonight. I heard I don't want anything. I don't want to do anything. I heard that, and I know what to do now.
And I know a lot of ladies mean that, or dudes. I mean, I know we have women that watch the show. Most likely, if a dude says he doesn't care, he probably doesn't, because he can't remember it. But I'm kind of the opinion. Valentine's Day is great, but acknowledge your Valentine. Most days.
Yeah, it should be more than just one day.
Yeah, at least appreciate them. A tad bit every now and then.
Yeah, make sure that they know. Make sure you know you love them every day, not just the one day a year. So,
yeah, when the rent's due.
Yeah.
And it's like if you need a favor or if you're in trouble, I mean that's not.
Yeah,
the
make
only
sure you
time.
tell them you love them more than tax season.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Do it all the time. I mean that's what you really do right there. So Valentine's Day 2/14, that is tomorrow. Be sure and acknowledge it, and then watch the Clyde Hart Memorial because it continues to. It's going to be a hell of an entry list.
Yeah, the entry list is pretty good.
Good stuff. Let's go to the hotline. Texas Legends Edition, back-to-back weeks, and this is a fun one as we travel over to San Antonio, which is still have a lot of people calling me. What's happening with San Antonio? Not a damn thing.
The same thing we told you would happen.
Nothing. But we do have a lot of memories of that place, and we have a lot of guys that did really cool stuff, and this is one of them right here, and still hanging around. Been meaning to do this for a long time. We finally got to reconnect. We talked on Super Bowl Sunday, and I'm glad that we get to welcome into the Revved Up Sports Show my man George Hagee. How we doing, Hagee?
Hey, Rodney, I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Good, man. So I know we talked. I know we talked yesterday. So what'd you think of the game? I don't think either one of us really gave a damn, but I mean, just kind of fun to sit there and watch a little football.
Well, my team won, so
nice.
I thought it was a good game.
That's a good thing.
So,
that's a good thing.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed it for a change. It
Nice.
was a good football game.
Mm-hmm.
So, George, talk about your run there in San Antonio, man. You had a lot of good runs down there. It was like every time you won, it was like a Super Bowl party. I mean, because the fans would just go nuts when you would win, and you won. I remember, I guess it was 92. You won damn near all of them, if not all of them. I think you skipped one race and still won the championship that year.
No, I did win the championship. I got dropped out of a race. Looking at the results right here, actually, 92, I won 11 of 22 races.
Wow.
And got scored for 21 starts and only 10 wins. There was a little discrepancy on the ride height of the car, and we couldn't seem to get it worked out, and that put me still track champion, but second in the Sun Belt region, which was just killer for me back in the day. You know, I was just a kid out, you know, trying to race my car and win races, and so I was just lucky to be the one that was doing it, you know.
Yeah.
But a lot of fun. The fans, I love the race fans. You know, they were part of what drove me, and you know, to this day, race fans around the whole country, more in Texas, just, you know, light me up.
Mm-hmm. So Hagee, let's dial this thing back. I mean, such a rich tradition there in San Antonio that you know that I always like to talk about. I mean, my dad and I, we were fortunate to get out there and be a part of Highway 16. Let's go back for you and your family. I mean, talk about how this all came to be. I mean, I know your dad, your brother. I mean, this goes all the way back to Pan American. How this all started for you guys and just kept building and building and building until you became, you know, the great driver that you were and still are.
Well, I certainly have to credit my dad for all that. You know, he was taking us to Pan American Speedway, and when I say us, my brother Rick and I, and we, you know, 5 years old, climbing on the fence. Ricky Ware was racing. I believe Waldo Harper, Paul Jett. You know, all the guys, the real, you know, history guys racing out there. And I remember climbing on the fence, rooting them when they went by. It was so cool. They all came right down the front of the grandstands before they went out onto the track and raced. And, you know, I believe they had a quarter midget, basically demonstration race out there one year. And it sparked my dad's interest. Of course, he raced himself. Got a cool picture of him here with several of the midget drivers from way back in the day. Not even sure what track it was at, but you know, he did race himself, and he wanted to get us into racing. And So we got to watch those quarter midgets race there on the front straightaway. And then, it wasn't long after that, we were at the quarter midget track, and he was asking if we wanted to do it. And of course, it's like, duh, let us have at it, And so, he spent a lot of time, with us at that track, and really, drove it in our heads what he thought we should be doing. And when we started listening to him, we started getting results, and I went on to win the 1981 Grand National Championship in the quarter midgets, and I believe it was the heavy half class. And so, it sparked from that into what was called the Lightning class at Highway 16 Speedway back early on. And, let's see, it was Melvin Myers.
It was you and Tommy. It was all
Tommy, Grimes, Dana Hebner out of Austin. We raced quarter midgets with her and her dad out of Austin. And so I think there was about 5 or 6 of us that would come out there and race. And I had a Pinto with a Starsky and Hutch stripe that was just so cool. My dad painted on there. And, so we had success, and, got to start to make friends at the racetrack and that sort of stuff. And, it just continued to grow from there. And fortunately, I was in a position, and my dad was in a position to be able to take me out of state racing when we got into the late models a few years later. And we went to Georgia, we went to Alabama, Florida, and, he spent gobs of money. And, I was just this punk out there who was able to drive this badass race car.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. And when I won specifically, it was really a lot of fun.
Yeah,
so, it made me try even harder to get out there and win a race. But, that's kind of it in a nutshell. We had good success in the late models there at San Antonio. Never had a whole lot of success traveling. When it can be a whole different ball game when you get outside of Texas racing. It's just more intense, and so it was tough. And fortunately, been able to go out with recent late model car that I had with Jared Fryer, and even myself, I didn't win, but Jared Fryer had won a race in New Smyrna back in, I believe it was 2012.
Yep.
And so we were doing pretty good, and it was just a lot of fun. But that's kind of where it started, was the quarter midgets. I believe I was 5 and my brother was 8 years old.
Wow. That's pretty good. So we ask all the San Antonio legends, we ask them the same question, and we have yet to get the same answer from any of you guys. And the question always is, what is the fastest line around San Antonio Speedway? Because everybody says another way. All you guys were super fast.
That's a good question. All the years that I raced at San Antonio Speedway, and it almost bit me when I came back in 2011, I guess, it was 2011 when San Antonio reopened. Was that right, Rodney?
Yeah, 2012. Yep.
2012. Okay, so all my years that I had spent racing around San Antonio Speedway, my car, when I could get it to work on the bottom of the track, would just fly. And when, it would open up a lane, because a lot of the guys would try and diamond the racetrack. And if I happened to be, faster in the center of the corner, it just opened it up to where I could just, ease right in there and get set up for passing them, going down the straightaway after that. But, like I say, it's a good question, because, these current late models with the way they're running with the bump stops and that sort of stuff, which I was not accustomed to.
Right.
And the first time I ever messed with it was at San Antonio Speedway in 2012. And, I tried to continue to drive that line, and obviously the car would get around there and everything, but it wasn't super fast. And, I think I had in one of the 100 lappers out there, one night, man, my car was on rails. And when it was on the rails, I was dogging that thing off into the corner, and that thing would just kind of diamond right up to the center of the, 1 and 2 or 3 and 4. Of course, 1 and 2's got that bad bump.
Yep.
So 3 and 4,
yep.
You could just run off into that corner, and that car would just kind of drift up. And then it seemed like the back end would just sort of step out. And when the second or the instant that back end the car would pivot, just stand back in it and come right off the bottom of the corner.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 different ways really for me. I didn't win with my late model, from 2012 on out there, but ran pretty respectably, I think. And that was surprisingly to me the fastest way around with that type of car at that point.
Man, that's crazy.
Which was against the grain.
Mm-hmm.
So, everything else up till then for me, and I've seen the track driven, both ways, and it never worked for me before 2012 to diamond the corner, but at 2012 on with the bump stop cars, that seemed to be the fast way around.
Yeah. George, I think one of the coolest things about your whole San Antonio story is that there's like 2 different eras right there for you. When you come in as a younger kid, you jump in with what at the time what we call now super late models. You jump in there, and you're racing Davidson and Tommy Davis and John Kelly and all of these people. There was that time, and you start winning races then. And then you kind of step away for a little bit, you go do other things, and you come back into the NASCAR Winston Racing Series thing, and you're racing Donnie Harelka, and Rick Rapp had found his way back to the weekly racing series somehow. Talk about those 2 different times. Man, 2 golden eras, and you were like the kick-ass in both of them, and that's real damn impressive.
Well, I appreciate that, and I really tried really hard. The first years of the late model, what I would call true late model straight rail car, with my dad up till I think was 1987 when we won that championship with his car. I'll call it his car at that point. Those were by far my favorite style of car, just a better car, in my opinion, than the late model stocks that the NASCAR series had promoted.
Yep.
But, both were racy, just one a little more racier than the other.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite is a straight rail, true, offset 2,700 50-pound car with 600 plus horsepower. That was just a ball of fire. And I spent years before I was even racing at San Antonio Speedway. I say years, it seemed like it, but I remember the hot summer nights, the full moons, and riding around on, I believe it was Dalbert's record truck, out there. And, I was a kid riding in the back of the record truck. Something would happen up in the corners, and we were the first ones there, and I was just riding that thing like some kind of chariot up to these different things that were happening on the racetrack, and watch them clean up the mess, get to smell the oil that was burning, or the water that was overheating, all that stuff. And those nights right there will forever stick in my mind. And I've posted a few things on Facebook last night, and everybody seems to have the same types of memories about being out there in the 80s in racing.
Sure.
But I did in 92. I actually, I think it was maybe late 1990. I came back and started driving D. Call's car.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had some success. And so I was like pretty happy with that. You know, we got over there, we all got together, we put that car together and went out and, you know, we ran pretty respectable, and we worked on the car a little bit. And finally, you know, the next thing you know, we were able to win a few races with it. And so, you know, fast forward to the next year, and so that D-Call car and the years after that were the you know, narrower, 3,100-pound cars with 2-barrel carburetor. You know, I think they were basically a stock bow tie head.
Yeah.
So they didn't have a lot of power, and they were a little heavier. But you know, when you're racing, you make what, you know, adjustments you need to as a driver. And you know, it just, I guess, you know, like I said, fortunately for me, I started at a young age. It you know, kind of came, well, it didn't come naturally. Obviously, my dad had a lot to do with it. And listening to him making the adjustments he suggested, I was able to be successful in both types of cars.
No, that's a great story. Yeah. Talk about your number. Everybody's got a story behind their number, and you've always run 47 in all the pictures I've seen. Maybe you've ran a different number in quarter minutes or whatever. How'd you get hung on the 47 number?
Well, you know, we were always, my brother, when we were racing, I was 4 and he was 7.
Nice.
And, you know, and so we combined the numbers. And also, you know, the thing I always liked about it is you add 4 and 7, you get 11. So, you know,
there you go. Yep.
Talk about race numbers, you know, those are really good numbers. At least 7 and 11 are super good race numbers. And so I would just, you know, if I didn't like it, I'd add them up.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. That's a very good thing.
Yeah.
So
that's where that came from.
So, George, all that success in San Antonio, and you, I mean, you venture out, you go to work for Neil Bonnet Race Cars. I mean, you're hanging bodies for, you know, you live the dream. I mean, you go to North Carolina, you get to race modifieds. You know, with Bob Harmon, with All Pro and all of that. Talk about outside of the Texas thing, because we're very Texas centric on this show and like to talk about these memories, but at the same time, we like to talk to you guys that went and lived that. I mean, live that dream. I mean, got away, did things. I mean, like I told you when I was talking to you yesterday, I'm like, so where are you? And you said, oh, I'm still in San Antonio, but I got a North Carolina area code. So talk about getting out and getting out into what really is NASCAR heaven out there.
Well, you know, before I was able to, you know, move out to Alabama, which is where I moved to a couple of months after graduating high school.
Wow.
Which I think they just did me a favor and kind of let me on through, you know.
Yeah.
But I do have my diploma, which I suggest, you know, it might ought to be something anybody out there listening might ought to do if you haven't got one. But we raced in the All Pro Series, and Bob Harmon was a promoter, and he was good, and he was very accepting of a young kid coming and racing with him. Because, I mean, I'll tell you, I was pretty young, you know, and running with I say running with them. I was at least on the same track with them, because I wasn't running with them, you know, at that point. And so, you know, it was always real cool to be the young kid. Everything was just so fascinating for me. It was hard. Now I look back and I can see things, you know, but then there was just so much going on.
Yeah.
It was hard for me to really absorb and appreciate what was going on. Now, you know, obviously I can look back and really appreciate where, you know, my dad took us racing over over up in Georgia, and in Tennessee at the All-American 400. We did the World Crown. I never did make the World Crown. I about knocked the wall down there, but never did make a World Crown race, which was I think, I'm not sure what part of Georgia.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what track that was, but that was a really heavy hitting race there, and we went up there without much luck. And but the other places that we went to, specifically, Pensacola, Mobile, and Montgomery, we did run pretty good at those tracks. I mean, never up front, never really wanted to, but I made some kid mistakes on the track. Sure. A couple of times. That was the biggest thing. I didn't want to trip anybody up, and it happened, and it's going to happen. Yep. If you're out on the track, it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's right.
But fortunately, I think the only time that anybody ever really got mad at me was Sterling Marlin.
Oh, nice.
And we were at there in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, for the All-American 400. We wound up in the last chance race. It was the last lap, and Sterling Marlin had the spot. And as a kid, I tagged him. Didn't wreck him. Okay. Just, went by him and made the All-American 400 show by doing what I did. And, his guys came over to the car, and I don't think they expected, some punk-ass Texan kid to come, with a mullet to come up out of this car. And when they did, they were all in a little bit of disbelief, and they just couldn't say anything and had to kind of turn around and walk the other way. But if I remember right, that was the only time I ever had anybody at that point come over and want to maybe set me straight,
No, it's awesome.
So did you notice the competition change when you left Texas? I mean, because we talk about it now, like Rodney said, we're kind of in a bubble here. And it seems like, when you go down to the southeast, and especially nowadays with Pensacola being real big, and you've got Mobile trying to come back, and Southern Super Series taking over all those places. I mean, was it really that big of a step when you joined the All-Pro Series at that point?
I'm really excited that some of these tracks are coming back. I obviously I wish that there were some tracks around here, but, seemed like short track racing had taken a bit of a dive for a while. And anything that can do for those places to thrive is just awesome. I wished I had a car and could go over and race with them now, but the competition, when you get out of Texas, for just the fact that it's more condensed competition, and you're at that point, you're messing with the best of the best.
Yep.
And so it is extremely tough. When I moved from here to North Carolina in 1993, I'd won my track championship here, and I made a little bit of money with the Sun Belt region deal, and it gave me enough to pack up my stuff and move to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Is pretty much where I wound up. Mm-hmm. And so I started racing at Hickory after I got settled in there, and I had my car, my late model, and their cars were just slightly different, pretty much the same, but slightly different. And it was going straight from, the small pond into the big pond, and them guys ate me up.
Yeah.
I really had to stick with it. And, I think my best finish at Hickory Motor Speedway was fourth.
Wow.
And, that was respectable for me. I thought it was pretty good. Obviously, I would have liked to have won a race there, but I never did. And that's okay. But you get up there, and, I was racing with Dale Jr., his brother Kerry,
mm-hmm.
or is the brother Kerry, or is it, and Kelly?
Yeah. Yeah,
his sister. Is that right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yep.
Yeah, and me and Jim Landon, buddy of mine who's took a nickname Taco up in North Carolina, Jim from here, went with me, and so we were the outcasts when we showed up at Hickory, and so we parked off kind of down in 1 and 2, sort of by ourselves, and the night of racing was over, and all 3 of the Earnhardts were the younger Earnhardts were racing there, and Taco and I are sitting there after the race drinking a cold beer, and all of a sudden here comes this really good looking girl walking down pit road in a fire suit.
There it is.
I'm like, it kind of looks like she's walking over this way. I'm not sure, but it looks like she might be coming this way. I started getting a little bit nervous because I didn't know what was going on, but anyway, it was Kelly. Yep. And she came over and she said, "Do you drive this car here?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, I'm sorry for getting into you during the race." And I couldn't believe it. And I said, "Hey, no problem." Of course, I missed the window closed almost instantly after that, but I missed that window, but even they were good. They had what they needed to really run up front up there, and not just the Earnhardts, it was the whole bunch. The Tommy Houston's boys, I was running with both of them, and Dennis Setzer, who was the national champion for a couple of years, I think, and Hickory Motor Speedway itself, I mean, that's a different world right there.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny that you mentioned that about Kelly, because I do want to ask you this. I mean, because watching you, over the years, talking about Kelly in a fire suit and all that, you were one of those guys. We've talked to John Kelly and a bunch of guys where, race fans in San Antonio, whatever, they just love them because of, the history and everything. But you and Tommy Grimes and some of these guys, you guys are rock stars. I mean, when you talk about the nice looking ladies or whatever, you guys, you kind of change things up there. It's like, who's this good looking dude with a mullet? I mean, that had to be pretty cool. That had to be pretty cool for you back in the day.
I'm telling you, that place made me feel like San Antonio Speedway. I was on top of the world back then.
You were.
I really think what may have started all that kind of stuff is because those fans got to see like Tommy and Melvin and myself all sort of grow up in the deal, and see us mature. Well, them mature a little bit, probably not me, but maybe as a driver. But anyways, you kind of witness that sort of stuff, and it you kind of start to feel it, and when you start to feel it, that's when it gets rowdy, and.
I got to tell you, George, I mean, I'm going to interrupt you because it was, I mean, I remember, the guys would win, whoever it was, Kelly, whatever, Greg Davidson, they would sit there and take their picture, with the presenter or whatever. You guys would win, like you would win. And it's like, okay, stop him. Let's calm down here. I mean, it's like you were a rock star out there.
Well, I wished I could bring that stuff back, and you just kind of feel this energy. It's the only way I know how to describe it. I was really fortunate to be where I was when I was, and all that sort of stuff, and be able to interact with the fans. Yeah. And I did several things away from the racetrack with the car, with the Muscular Dystrophy Association back in the day when I was running some stickers for Muscular Dystrophy Association. KJ97 was sponsored by KJ97. We went and did some different things. So it gave me a little bit of a opportunity that maybe not everybody else had to engage the fans and get to maybe know some of them a little bit more than just being a driver on the track.
Mm-hmm.
So, George, I'm going to go back and talk about kids in racing. Not to cut you off again, but you mentioned quarter midgets. We've had a couple people pop up on the Facebook feed and talk about the quarter midgets was the right way to get introduced to stuff. Is that still the right way now, or is there too many open avenues where some of these kids just come in with big checks and just get right to the top with daddy's money writing the checks?
Well, obviously, if you've got the luxury of being able to do that, then that would be the way to do it. But, we were just regular old people and of course it was different back then, but, how else to get started? When we were racing quarter midgets, there was all the races in quarter midget racing, there was judges.
Yeah.
Okay. So, there was no dumping people without consequences. There was, you learned respect of the car, the track, the competitors, and, the technique of actually racing, instead of just running up there and knocking the next guy out of the way.
Yeah.
So I think it's very valuable in anybody that may want to, become a race car driver, because it just ingrains all that knowledge that, most of these guys, if you got the money to just show up, you don't know, you just get out there and next thing you know, you're a clown because
that's it.
You just, tearing shit up, pardon the French, but, tearing stuff up. So I think it's absolutely a great way to get into racing.
Mm-hmm. So, and that's George with you, Hagee. It is. I tell you, it is so fascinating to talk to you because, I was talking about your time with the late models, with those guys in the '80s, whatever it was, and then coming back and racing in the NASCAR late models and that great run that you had right there, and then advancing on, and then here we are. We're going years and years and years. And I'm at CTS, a part of the team right there, and I see a 47G that comes in, and it says George Hagee. And I'm like, I never met this man, but I knew somebody named that. I'm going to go see, is this George Hagee that I used to watch in San Antonio? So after all these years, you come back and you're in one of those late models that you talked about. Talk about the return. I mean, the return back to Texas. I mean, seriously, dude, you're like a country music song. It's like, I mean, talk about that time when you come back to CTS.
Well, Rodney, I'm just the lucky guy that gets to do it, really.
Well.
But when I came back, the whole thing with getting back into late model racing for me, and it started with San Antonio Speedway reopening, is my dad, George, when he died, he wanted half of his ashes spread down at the beach in Port Aransas. We spent a lot of time down there as a young family.
Yeah.
And then he wanted the other half of his ashes spread around the racetrack, and he wasn't specific. And I never had the opportunity the whole time I was in North Carolina. I sold all my racing stuff. I'd gotten out of racing. And I had a couple of guys offer me a car or something every now and then to be able to go take care of what I wanted to do. I didn't want to just walk out, with a cup of ashes and dump at the track. I wanted to do it with a little style.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow, San Antonio Speedway's opening back up, and just it all aligned. And so I called Augie Grill at Grand American Race Cars, and I said, hey, I want to rent your car. And he's like, well, he said, okay, and he hemmed and hawed a little bit and stuff. I said, well, look, I said, I need to, I want to go, this one race, the reopening, and I'm going to dump these ashes during a practice lap or something, and then run the race, and then we're done.
Damn.
And Augie, it's like, he thought about it for a few minutes, and he happened to have a car there, and it wasn't a brand new car. It was an old Eddie Hanks car is what it was. And
yeah.
I don't know if y'all know that name or not, but he's run all pro quite a bit.
Yep.
And so it had been fixed, and it was sitting there, and he had it. He said, George, you know, he just told me straight up. He said, it's going to be cheaper for you to just buy a car and race it, and then you'll have it to race than it will be for you to rent my car, you know. And so I was like, so I got off the phone. I did a little talking to some people and got some support. And next thing you know, Johnny and I are headed to Alabama in the truck and trailer and picking up a badass race car.
Yeah.
And, you know, headed back to San Antonio and bring it out to San Antonio Speedway, and, you know, didn't tear it up. And I did get to take care of my dad's last wish, and, you know, was practice laps out there around the track, you know, just kind of, you know, let him go out the window in turns 3 and 4. And, so, you know, it was kind of on after that. You know, I just raced that night, tried to stay clean, and ended up, I don't know, maybe 4th or something, not even sure. But that's what drugged me back into it. And I shouldn't say drugged me back in. I mean, I was hungry for it again and ready to do something. And so, you know, once we ran that deal, and of course, you know, had a car that wasn't tore up, they're racing just north of here at Kyle, a track that I've never seen. I was like, well, they're racing Saturday night. Let's go race, or Friday night, you know, whatever. Yeah. And so we did, and you know, had a little bit of success there. And I tell you that the night that I won, it had been,
oh man,
you know, 20 plus years since I had experienced anything like that. And, you know, like I said, the energy, it's internal stuff that I, you know, feel, and you know, it just is very attractive.
Yeah. Wow.
It never goes away.
So what a story. Oh my goodness.
No, it doesn't go away. And so we started racing at Kyle, and boy, you talk about a tricky little track itself. You know, there's things that just go against the grain. You know, turns 1 and 2 there were the, you know, totally backwards thing. You know, you'd think you got to swing wide or something. And I didn't start going fast there until I, you know, started hugging the bottom on the entry, and man, that made such a huge difference. It's amazing what a little bit of a line change with those cars could really do. And if you didn't hit your mark, well, you were way out in left field. So really had to concentrate and keep the momentum up and hit your marks. And if you had a good car, you had something for them.
Yeah.
Talk about how you got hooked up with Jared. Jared's been on the show a couple of times, actually probably more than a couple of times. Cool dude, good. Obviously a great racing family with Pops, and then Mark's been on the show I think once or twice talking about Pops and Jared both. But how'd you get hooked up with Jared?
Well, okay. So, you know, I moved to North Carolina, and you know, started trying to race. And of course, you know, I get up there, and I didn't have a job, but I knew how to build race cars.
Right.
You know, and so I went around and found a job building. Well, I say building, putting bodies on, you know, what was then the Cup and Winston Cup and the Busch Series cars at CJR Products there in Winston-Salem. And just started working, you know, and I had known Mark from racing. I mean, obviously we'd crossed paths and that sort of stuff, and I'd raced against his dad a few times. Of course, you know how that story goes. That was Freddie Pryor, you know, so, but, you know, and so I'm working in the industry now, and so is Mark. You know, he's moved on, and he's, you know, married, and he's got a family coming together for him and that sort of stuff. And eventually we both wound up at Bill Davis Racing, and he was the shop foreman there, and I was doing at first the Busch cars across the street, and then moved over into the Cup shop in the same shop that he was the foreman at, and you know, we had known each other, and we talk, and he's talking about a quarter midget track that, you know, I think was put together with the help of the Labanis, just south of Winston-Salem there in Salisbury. I call it Salisbury, whatever. I'm not sure, but, you know, and so his boy, Jared, who I, you know, got to meet there at the shop one day, are racing quarter midgets. And so I was coming up through Charlotte, north of Charlotte, and coming through Salisbury one Saturday or Sunday, and I thought, you know, I think they're racing today or something. I'm going to stop in and check it out. I hadn't been to a quarter midget track in, I don't know, you know, a long time, you know, probably since the early 80s or something. And so this is probably, you know, 99-ish, 2000-ish somewhere. And so I stop in, and sure enough, you know, they're there, and they're racing. And I think, you know, Jared was pretty young and kind of going into the quarter midgets. They were established and stuff. And, you know, I got that energy that I was just describing, you know, and I wanted to participate. You know, obviously I couldn't get in the car or anything like that, but I could help Mark and Jared. And, you know, not necessarily hands-on help. You know, I want, you know, hey, let's, you know, so I did anything I could, you know, bought them parts or whatever they might need at that particular time. I mean, I didn't have a lot of money. I just had some money that I could help with, and wanted to help, and did. And so, you know, they progressed and went on, and, you know, got pretty good at the quarter midgets and stuff. And so, you know, built a little bit of a relationship with Jared at that point. Of course, had a relationship with Mark and stuff. And so, you know, we even raced some remote control cars together. Mark and I did quarter scale RC cars, and they were a lot of fun. And, you know, a few years later, you know, 10 years later, I guess, here we are. And Jared, I think he was racing, not sure what he was racing at that point, but, you know, he was in the thick of things, right in the heart of racing, and he was up to date on things and that sort of stuff. And so I was like, you know, hey, you know, I'm buying a race car, and you know, I don't really understand this bump stop stuff, and it can really be a lot less than what my mind can make it out to be. It's you know, it's not. I'm not going to say it's simple by any means, but so I needed help, and you know, I thought, you know, what better way to, you know, just lean on the young kid, you know, Jared. And so I did. And when I took that car to New Smyrna, I guess might have been 2013, I think, because San Antonio was 2012. It'd have been the following year. We took it to New Smyrna for Speed Weeks, and Jared and Mark both happened to be there. And so, you know, we all got together, and I ran the car, I don't know, 3 nights, and I believe Jared ran the car 3 nights. And so those first 3 nights, you know, they were there and helping me, you know, get the car better, because I didn't, you know what I was doing. I mean, I knew to get out on the track and drive it and shift gears and all that kind of stuff, but as far as to try and make any kind of improvement, you know, I depended on Jared and Mark. And you know, I'll tell you, Mark, he is good at racing, period. Whether it's late model, it doesn't matter. And Jared is just like his grandpa, I think. And so, you know, I ran good at New Smyrna Speedway. Of course, I kind of feel like it's my style of track and everything. But then, you know, I was like, you know, I've felt like I've done pretty good here. I didn't win, but I had ran respectively, and I said, it's your turn. And so he got in the car, and I'll be darned if the second night, I think it was the second night we ran it, he won that night.
Yep.
And so, we came back from New Smyrna Speedway racing. I think we missed maybe one night, so it'd have been like 5 or 6. I guess it was 6 nights maybe. And all we had torn up was a right front fender, and that was absolutely amazing. And so I still had something left to race.
No.
And so we kept racing, and the relationship grew stronger, especially after winning a race, together and stuff. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, not a lot of people know this, but, I have a problem wearing a helmet with a Hans device and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
And, an amazing amount of stress it put on myself and my psyche or whatever. I ain't trying to sound weird or nothing, but it's not something that I would wish on my worst enemy. But, so that never went away.
Yeah.
And, it progressed, and I had my fun. I had won a race at Kyle, and, it took me back,
Yeah.
to 1980 something, back at Highway 16. And so I had, at that point, I guess, done what I had set out to do, which was, number one, take care of my dad's last wishes. And number two, maybe win a race. And I did.
Yeah.
And, it was so cool. And so I had some support going here, in San Antonio, and we were able to, take care of getting Jared back and forth for the different races and stuff. And it's just natural. It was just natural to sort of hand over the reins to the young guy who has an extremely great driving talent, just like Freddie did. Yeah. And let him have at it. It was my way of helping, and so we had a great run while it lasted. And, I'm really proud every time that he races out there that I was able to participate with them and win with them. Mm-hmm. It fuels that inside energy. I can't quite put a finger on.
No, I totally get that. And George, to me, I think in those final years of Kyle, the whole thing with Kyle, it breaks your heart to know it's not there and all this. But I think some of the coolest moments for me were, number one, you won a championship there, and like this whole story that I talk about with you. I mean, to me, I'm all about stories. I'm all about stories and storytelling. for you to put it all together and get through all of this and come back and win a championship and win there and get to interview you on the racetrack. I mean, that was so great. But at the same time, I think what you did. And Texas race fans need to understand the night that Jared won in Kyle in your car with you right there, that was a fryer back in victory lane in Texas, and that I sat there and I'm going on and on and on and I'm crying after you guys are done. That was such a big night, man, and that was your work. I mean, that was your work. That kind of culminated your story, in my opinion.
Wow. I never looked at it that way, but you're right, and I didn't realize it. I just was doing what I do, and trying to help a young kid out in his racing career. I never had any kids. If I did, I'd want them to be like Jared Pryor.
Yep.
And it was all I could do, and it just felt right. And I'm really. It makes me even prouder now that, especially you put a light on it the way you just did, than I ever have about, just kind of turning it over and making it making it happen for somebody.
Well,
and we were able to do that.
And that's the other part, George. You know, now that we look at it, you know, I know we have a racetrack in Houston trying to get stuff done, but I mean, the story's written, and all we have to do is go back and look at memories and get to talk to you and several folks that tell these stories. And to me, that's what it's all about, and that's why, you know, I think you said it yesterday that we never got to connect back when when we first tried to. And
right.
When you said it was for a reason, that's why. I think that's why, because it's a story to be told.
It may very well have been. I mean, you know, I just, you know, I've been sort of looking in the rearview mirror a little bit here lately, and you know, realizing that, you know, a lot of what's taken place over the years has been really cool and really good, and I'm proud to be able to stand here right now and say that.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And I want to see racing continue on. You know, I've you know, lived and breathed racing my whole life, and I've just been fortunate that I've, you know, done what I did and had the people around me that I had to support me the ways that they did. And you know, it's been a good life for me, and it's produced a career that, you know, has experience like not many others. And you know, I've moved off sort of, since there's no racing anymore, you know, building some street rods, and right now I'm working on a 1963 Indy Roadster that actually, it ran 63, 64, and 65. It was owned by Gordon Van Loo out of Houston, I believe.
Yeah, the VitaFresh people. Yep.
Yeah. So the VitaFresh Indy Roadster from those years is sitting here, and in 1964, I believe that car, it finished fifth.
Nice.
And so reading, you know, as I'm working on this thing, I'm reading a little bit more about the history.
Yeah.
And of this car, and, you know, when we went quarter midget racing across the country, any chance we got, my dad would take us to, you know, midget races or sprint car races and that kind of stuff. And got to meet a driver named Mel Kenyon.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, so Mel Kenyon, for whatever reason, my dad, you know, and I understand now, but my dad really liked him. And I remember my dad taking my brother Rick and I over to Mel and introducing him to us. And, you know, we talked to Mel a little bit and stuff. And so he kind of became, you know, one of my favorite drivers.
Sure.
And so I was reading the history of this particular car that I'm working on, and it was involved. I mean, you know, may not be that great of a thing to say, but it was involved in the wreck that Mel Kenyon got burned in Indianapolis. And I guess it was maybe 60.
Yeah, I was going to say 64
or something.
Yeah, 64.
62.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure. It's ever been 63, 64. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah. Wow.
I'd have to refer to my buddy Texas Tom on that.
Oh, look out.
He could probably answer those questions.
So, George, I got to tell you, with your whole history and everything that we're talking about right here, about the only thing that's left for you to do when it comes to the Texas part, you know, Grimes showed up and started racing dirt. You know, he was. Are we going to see George Hagee in a number 47 on the dirt at some point? That's all. And if I plant that seed, credit us when you do it.
We'll send you some stickers.
Well, I'd be lying if I told you I hadn't thought about it.
Oh, there it
is. And even Tommy, you know, he offered. You know, I guess it was about 3 years ago. He says, "Why don't you come on down here?" He says, "You know, I'll let you run my late model." And I never took him up on that.
No.
You know, I've got that one in my pocket still, so you never know what might happen.
There it is. To be determined. Be determined.
Yeah.
Oh, good stuff, man. Dude, this has been a blast. Talking stuff.
Well, I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I have myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be able to sit and discuss these things with you. Like I said, man, you've done a lot, and you've done a lot for a lot of people, and that's what this sport is all about, and that's why you are a Texas legend, my friend.
Well, I greatly appreciate that. I never set out to be any kind of a legend or anything, but I'm glad that my experience has put me where I'm at, and all I've ever really wanted to do was just go out and win some races and have some fun, and if I can help the next guy coming up, that's what I'd like to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
All right, my man. We'll talk soon, buddy. Thanks for the time, and let's definitely stay in touch.
Yeah, Rodney, I greatly appreciate it. Y'all, putting together a good deal. I'm glad you're still kicking, and hope to hear you next week.
Absolutely, we'll keep doing it. Thank you, George. I'll talk to you soon, my man.
Okay,
you bet.
Y'all have a good one. Thank you. Bye.
You too. There he is, George Hagee Jr. And I had seriously, I had no idea about the ashes.
I had no idea. No idea. Never remotely heard that story from anybody.
That is where, as much as I poo-poo upon the idea of San Antonio, I think that I just became animated about we need to open that place. I mean, seriously. I mean,
we need to open it, but it's got to get open right.
It's got to be open the right way. And that, I mean, really, it is. I mean, talking about there with the eras that he did that in. I remember watching him with Leroy Farmer. I mean, all these guys that we've talked with Slick Yeomans. I mean, all of these guys. Here comes Hagee with the mullet, and he gets out there and he's whipping their ass. And those guys will tell you that he was, and he didn't mess around. I mean, he may have run in the Bombers a time or two. But boom, here he comes in the late models, and he's out there with that bunch. And then he goes away, and then he comes back in the Camaro, which at the time, and that picture keeps popping up, where he's out there. I think it's a picture that pops up there with him and Harelka. And it was Hagee in like the Camaro, and it was just such a different look right there. But
everybody else is running Luminos.
You know what I forgot to ask?
I forgot to ask him who was his biggest competitor.
Dude, shit. I want to call him back because the thing that I forgot to ask him was the story goes back, I think, in 1992 when they had the NASCAR guys came in, and you had all these dudes that came in, and I think it was 7 guys that came in, and they were going to race the NASCAR late models, and they had put Terry Labonte out in I don't know whose car it was.
Somebody hit the wall and bent a rear end, wasn't
it? I don't know what the deal was, but Labonte was in somebody's car, and somehow Terry ends up in that white number 47. And he destroys the field. I mean, it's like he checked off and left him when he jumped in that Hagee car. And it was, God dang it.
Call him, text him.
Bless America.
Call him, text him. He'll pick back up.
I'm going to call him back. We're going to call him back and ask him about that. You go ahead. Let me work the phone.
I'll let you work the phone. So it looks like New Smyrna was actually racing earlier. Looks like our buddy William Byron won the super late model portion of that. So that's the update from New Smyrna, so that those that are watching us instead of the World Series.
Okay, Rob.
George, okay, you're listening. Tell me about when Labonte jumped in your car in 92, I think it was. Hey, he's listening. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Let's see if we're going to get him here.
Hold on a second. I have a little technical difficulty here.
Live radio, don't worry about it.
No, dude. No.
Rodney.
Yeah.
Pardon, Russ.
Yeah.
Is that who's with you there, Rodney?
Yep. I got you, man. I forgot. I wanted to ask you about when Labonte drove your car in that race of whatever they called it, and he had been in somebody else's car, and he's like, "I want to drive 47."
I've got a picture of Terry sitting in my car with me and my mullet, chatting with him. And I remember that night plain as day. I was racing for I think what they called it was the Race of Champions. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that's what they called it.
Yeah.
Michael Waltrip, I don't remember, but Terry was definitely in it there. And, so they had contacted the late model drivers because they wanted to put on, a little exhibition race with the Cup drivers at the time. And so I had opted out because, I had all my eggs in the basket.
Right.
Was actually trying to win the Sun Belt region. And, the last thing I wanted to do was,
get your shit tore up.
have somebody tear up my car and then, I'd be left dry. And so I was like, I opted out, but I watched, what was going on from perched on top of the truck up there. And, so they had to Terry and, he got into a couple of different cars, and I don't remember exactly whose cars they were. But it just didn't look, I could tell by what was going on that, it just wasn't right. So I actually, and he may have wanted to drive my car. He never came over and said that or anything, but I walked over to him.
Yeah.
He told us he did,
and
George.
I said, well, I had walked over to him and I said, hey man, I said, I don't know if you're not maybe feeling what's right. Cause there was no other driver that was there that I would have ever let drive my race car, but Terry Labonte. I knew that he would respect the car. And so I went over to Terry and I told him, I said, hey, I don't know if you're having a hard time finding a car you're comfortable in or what, but, if you'd like to sit in my car and see if it sort of fits you right, if you'd like to drive it, you can drive my car. And, he hopped in and fortunately, the years that I had prior to that, building cars and stuff, because that car I had built myself, and built, I was just straight tubing, built the whole car. Those were the same types of cars they ran at Nashville when I was working in Alabama. I worked at a shop there that built those cars, and so I came home and that was my baby.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah.
And so, I did hear briefly y'all mention that he went out there and basically, he ran really well. I'll just say that. And, Michael Walter, I think, pushed him down the back straightaway one time, if I remember right. And it really, I was like, oh God, this is where it's going to happen. I thought it was going to get destroyed or something. And he finally, he gained some distance between himself and the rest of the field. And then of course, it came to be my turn,
Yeah, that's right.
He won the race, and then it was my turn. And so the next thing you know, I was on a mission that night, and I just drove hard from lap one to the finish. And he had come over to me after the race. He says, hey, you might want to just kind of tone it down a little bit, I'll never forget. He's like, you might want to just, not so, and so, and the competition was good. The guys that I was competing with, they'd go home and they'd do their homework. And I think I heard one of y'all talk about one of my best competitors, and I'll answer that question. And that was Donnie Horelko.
Of course.
Yeah.
I like Donnie. We pitted next to each other, and, we were competitors. And my dad, always, my whole life is the competition's basically the enemy. Right or wrong,
right.
That's what I, had in my brain.
Right.
And so, I never did speak to him a whole lot. I mean, we said some things, and then his dad said a few things to me one night.
Paul. Yeah, of course.
And back and forth. But, I always enjoyed racing with Donnie. And, he was just a good old guy. Wished he was with us. Like to go and maybe break some bread somewhere or have some dinner with him or something. But he's moved on to the
better
racetrack in the sky.
That's right. All right, George. Sorry, because I wanted to ask you about that, then I forgot, and I cut you loose. So anyway, thanks for jumping back on that. That is a great story right there, man.
Fastest part 2 ever.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The joy of live radio.
Yeah, Russ, good to talk with you. Is if I've got that right.
You got it. You got it.
Yeah, and Rodney, I look forward to talking to y'all again sometime in the future.
You bet, man. We'll do it. Thank you so much, George. Be
Bye.
well. Yeah, that man, I do. I remember that. And that's when
Terry waxed their ass, to put it politically correctly.
Dude, and I got to tell you, it was I remember that day. So we showed up.
It was like Ernie Irvin, Jimmy, I think Jimmy Spencer was the next year cuz they did it back-to-back years, right?
Yeah, and I got to tell you the biggest frown that I have of that whole day, Rusty Wallace was there.
Yeah, but Rusty Wallace wasn't racing.
I know. He was just there signing autographs. And this was, I think, in the middle of summer. And they had them all under the grandstands there at San Antonio. That it's still there. And I remember Rusty Wallace sitting there, and he was so pissed. He didn't want to be sitting there in the heat doing that. And I'm thinking, I'm not sure I like this guy. I mean, he was pissed. He didn't want to be a part of it. He, fans were coming up or whatever. And I mean, I get it. I mean, I totally get it. But that's where we go back to the Richard Petty thing with the signature and all that.
Well, Neil Bonnet was racing with crack ribs, remember?
I know.
Friendly guy, one of the nicest guys I've ever met, even as a kid.
Yeah.
He was just a super nice guy. Yeah. Neil Bonnet was.
Those really were the days, and that's where we go back to that San Antonio was full. I mean, it was like jam-packed for,
obvious reasons.
10-lap exhibition race, and then I remember, like Hagee said right there, he comes out and he just like destroys the field. And it's like, okay. So, yeah, man, good stuff. Good stuff.
I think he won them both. I think he was at both of them and won them both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that was before Labonte went to Hendrick. He was running the Sunoco car for Billy Hagan, the 94.
In the Hagan car or the number 1 for Richard Jackson, the Skoll car. It was one of the two. It was kind of when Terry was. I think that's when folks were thinking that Terry was done. That he was going to be done, and maybe he was. But the funny thing is with that, where I thought that was so cool. Watching that night was, I mean, you remember the first late model champion of Highway 16 was Terry Labonte. Yeah. So for him to jump back into that great Hagee car, and I think that's talking about just another contribution there of George Hagee. I think that Terry jumping into that car and getting out there back on what was one of his home tracks. I mean, what kind of effect did that have on Terry Labonte to be like, watch this. I mean,
he probably like this old joint ain't changed a bit.
It ain't changed a bit. Man, what a great story right there. I totally forgotten about that. And thanks to George for checking back in. Here we go. It's time for Daytona. No class. The class is done. What do we have? We have Wednesday.
Qualifying is on Wednesday.
Okay.
The duels are on Thursday, starting at 6:00 local. They're on Thursday. I think qualifying starts at 6 too. Then you've got the truck race, Craftsman truck race with our buddy Caden Honeycutt and the Ropers. That's at 7 o'clock, I think, on Friday. Mm-hmm. Then you got the Xfinity race on FS1 Saturday afternoon. Then, of course, the Cup race, pre-race at like 1:30.
Yeah. And, of course, all week you've got the World Series happening at New Smyrna. Tomorrow is really going to be one of those times that you circle and check out the Clyde Hart Memorial because the entry list continues to grow on that one. I mean, you got some of the best of the best. That is the initial debut, I guess, as they would say, of the ASA Southern Super Series. So I think that's going to be a really good race. You got Bubba Pollard in there, William Sawalich. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I think that's going to be one. Treat your honey to a great viewing experience on Flow Racing. That's what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, and then don't forget, there's still time to order. Good God, I'm trying to do multitasking.
What you selling here, man?
There's still time to sign up and play with the Russ Fantasy League.
That's right.
We do talk NASCAR on the other show, but you guys are more than welcome to join the show. Working on some prizes for that. Looks like we may end up giving a winner to the Daytona 500 in the fantasy league may end up getting a gift card.
Yeah, and the whole thing is, I mean, if you join in on that, I mean, what we're really hoping to do is like on this show, as well as on the Saturday show, you know, at hornfm.com and the radio show, kind of really showcase into the fantasy league right there. You know, we got some pretty lofty goals on how many people we want. It's at 18 right now. That sucks. Bobby wants 40.
I wanted 40, but I don't think I'm going to get it.
If I can get 25 at this point, this late in the going, as we get closer to Daytona, if we get 25 active people playing is really the whole thing. And I know it's a lot to follow. And the whole thing is you don't have to do a lot of research on this. I mean, even you people that don't watch but watch, you know who to plug in there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
you know who's fast when you get to
right,
Talladega. You know
right.
who's fast when you get to California.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty simple right there. So jump in there and join in, and you never know. You might win something. You know, I don't know what it may be. I mean, it may be a great prize. It may just be a kick in the shorts. But hopefully you're gonna win something. The great question right there, Rusty asking. The way it works. So what you do is you pick the
5.
Top 5. You pick 5 cars. You pick 5 drivers, and then they're head to head. You go head to head with a couple of, I think it's about 3 different ones.
They pick 3. It's basically bets, but you get to go head to head on who do you think is going to finish higher, this driver or that driver.
That's right. So you pick that, and then the cool part about it is where I like it, you know, better than fantasy football is that when you pick the 5, you pick one alternate, one that's going to be sitting in the garage, and you have up until the end of the second stage.
Into the second stage.
And you can insert, I mean, if you've got somebody in the garage.
Somebody ate it earlier in the day and
right.
hit the fence, you can put your garage player into the spot of one of your starters and get the points for that.
You can flip them in there, and everything goes, you know, the full, the full year. I mean, you just kind of sit there and do it. It's a fun way. I think what this does, I mean, just like fantasy football, you know, fantasy sports, it gives you, you watch it differently. It's like, okay, I'm going to put Michael McDowell in my lineup. You want to sit there and see what he's doing. And, you know, Chris Buescher, and that's where the cool thing about it is, obviously, you want to go to the top, you know, 4 or 5 guys, whatever it is. But at some point,
you can only use them 10 times.
That's right. At some point, you can't use them. So it's really fun. I mean, it's really fun.
It doesn't take very long to set up either. You
No.
take a couple. I need to take a little longer to set mine up because apparently I'm not performing at the level I should.
And I think probably it's probably too late at this point because I know some folks have asked. It's like we should have done a tutorial on there. Here's how you set it up and walk them through. But pretty much go to NASCAR.com, hit fantasy. You're going to have to put in an email address. They're not going to bombard you with anything. You can opt out of offers. You can opt out of all of that stuff.
It tells you how to play, how to sign up, everything at NASCAR.com fantasy.
Set up a password, and that's it. And you can be a part of it. And we are called what?
Russ Nation NASCAR Fantasy League. Pretty simple.
There it is. Be a part of that. And
or Revved Up Nation.
Revved Up Nation.
Revved Up Nation.
And Revved Up Sports Show and Revved Up ATX. So be a part of that. And as we said, Revved Up ATX Saturday on the Horn. Wrong one. As we get.
Speaking of the Horn,
speaking of the Horn, we will be there Saturday at 11 a.m. Daytona 500 preview, all of that good stuff coming on as it's time to go racing on the NASCAR side.
It is time to go. Actually, you notice some fresh paint coming up here in a couple of weeks for the show too, or a couple of days.
That's right, and they are racing at New Smyrna. Support those local short tracks. You can't get to Florida, you can't get to the World of Outlaws. Stream it. It's okay.
It's okay,
it's
especially
really okay.
that far away.
Yeah. It's
really
great
programming.
Yep. A big thanks. George Hagee being a part of the program tonight. That right there. Texas Legends. And like I said, I mean, how long before he gets in that dirt car?
Depends on if Tommy's still got one. I think Tommy's done hung the helmet up again, so we'll see.
Yeah. We'll check it out. Good stuff. All of the replays available on the Revved Up Sports Show page on Race on Texas. And, of course, RevvedUpSportsShow.com. Thank you all for being a part of it, and we'll do it again next Monday. Wrap up the Daytona 500. He's Bobby, I'm Rodney, and we are out of here, guys. Have a great week.